Now, I always say to HR people, think like scientists, right? Think about experimentation. You don't get it right, but what you do is, I know that broadly I'm going to need leaders that can do this in the next 5 years. So what are the 3 or 4 things I'd like to try that will help me develop leaders? Now, not all of them will work. Some will work better than others, but by trying those different experiments, so we're doing a lot of work on secondments and moving people around the organization and taking them outside of their core discipline. Now, that wasn't easy to convince people. It was a great idea because the finance people want to hang on to the finance people and the HR people want to. But if we're developing fully rounded leaders that are capable of running businesses with all of that, those challenges and issues in terms of running a human enterprise, then we've got to have, real-time development for the people that are potentially going to do that. So I think you've got to, we've got to be much more adaptive in terms of thinking about learning and development interventions and more about experimentation and pilot. But it does take you back to, you still got to know the why, what difference, and how you're going to measure it. Otherwise, you don't know whether the experiment's worked or not.
Yeah, and interesting because you said something earlier about culture, and I think it's very interesting because there are organizations out there where the culture is actually, we applaud and we recognize and we reward leaders for developing talent, helping people gain new skills, etc. And those that don't, and therefore talent gets hoarded. They're mine. Leave them alone. Don't touch them.
And that's why you have to break down the functional silos, because that's part of you don't want people that think in very narrow functional expertise. So again, I always say, so people say to me, what makes a great HR leader? And I go, well, the first thing is I'd like them to have done some leadership of people early in their career. I'd like them to have worked in another discipline. I'd like them to have worked in sales or operations or marketing or, and they say, why? Because I go, 1, they've learned to manage people themselves. 2, they understand some of the pressures of dealing with customers or winning work or managing for optimized performance. And all of those things are great things because you bring them back to the HR and go, you understand the customer more, you understand the business more, and you've got a much more, and then I think this is the point, isn't it? We want people that are much more holistic. Do careers now go up, functional silos? They still do in many organizations, but in reality, I'm always interested in the people that jump the borders, really. They're always the people that I find really interesting.
Yeah, fantastic. And final question for me, what's the one question, we're talking about all these, the potential for leadership, talent, skills and gaps that may exist. What's the one question I should have asked you that I haven't?
I think there's most probably a question around what does this mean for organizations? So I think, so for me, what does it mean for my organization? Well, it means that people's are really high in the strategic mix. So whereas historically, I think this was a business that people were a cost and a commodity, now all of a sudden they're really high up in them in how we compete, because we know having the right leadership population, having the right management skills, and having the right technical competencies is what will make us effective. And we've won that argument with the leadership. And now my leaders now spend time talking about talent. They now spend time talking and demanding learning and development interventions. And they don't see it as a cost, they see it as an investment. And that's the shift that we have to make. So if you want your organization to be successful and to outperform their competitors, you've got to invest in the human capital, which means you've got to think about this strategically, plan to execute it, be clear about measurement, experiment, and you'll be successful, because that's what makes organizations thrive.
Kevin, thank you very much for joining me. Appreciate it.
I enjoyed it very much.